Scott.
Mark.
It's episode 11.
Holy cow. This is insane because we're in November now.
Yes.
At the time of we're not in November, but when people are listening to this, it's
At
November.
time of release, this will be November.
Good gosh. Hey, thanks for sticking around.
It's wild.
It is so crazy.
I know a few episodes ago we talked about we talk about this every time. It floors me that we're doing something we love this way. It's very cool.
Well, I've had people ask me, they're like, Scott, you do so many things. Like, why also a podcast? And I'm like, because it's about board games and it's not work. Like, I know your end is work,
yes,
but you still really enjoy it. It's like, oh, yeah, Scott brought up a really good topic. Or, man, this sounded really, really good. I'm really glad I brought this game up because I like the fact that we highlighted this game. Or,
Yeah. One of the really big gets for me from this is the fact I've just picked up a new skill set.
Right?
I know board games, I can do this, and I can get all my various experiences there. But for picking up a brand new skill of audio processing and editing and recording and doing all this stuff, it has been really fun for me because I was thinking about this the other day. I have never had a real skill set when it comes to visual media. Mm-hmm. But written media has always been something I've been very good at. I've been very good at storytelling. And so being able to take something and then modify off of that has been really fun for me.
Yeah, same. I have the Twitch channel. And so, of course, I'm lead storyteller. And so the fact that I don't have as much to do during this. I mean, I still have quite a bit of little work, but my amount of work compared to your amount of work, vastly different. Yeah. I'll be honest. I'm very happy for that.
Yeah. I mean, Thankfully, we've gotten to a fairly stable point with the editing schedule that I'm not constantly gone, because there was a stretch where Natalie looked at me when we were doing it every week and it was too much.
It wasn't sustainable, which is the reason why we switched to every other week. And thank you all that are still listening and then listening to our little vignettes, because those are almost as fun as the episode themselves.
Yeah, they're a nice brief thing for me to go through and realize I'm going to make some interesting editing choices and make interesting snappy content, and that's just been fun to work through.
Yeah. Well, and the nice thing is also, especially since I'm going to start being on the road here at the time of the recording, I could record stuff from home or when I'm on the road and just send them to you as an audio file, and you can be like, okay, this doesn't sound great, but doesn't sound bad, and go that route.
And we now have our setup that allows me to actually have you remote in, which is also very nice.
That'll be very nice, especially if the roller derby thing keeps me busy.
Well, why don't we move on and head into what has been on our table. Hey, Scott, what's been on your table, man?
Funny you should ask. First one I'm going to talk about real quick is the game called Chuhan. We just got done playing it before we got in here. I know you're going to talk about it a little bit later.
Yep.
Very interesting card shedding game. Beautiful artwork. It was fine. We'll get into that more later. Always an absolute favorite from mine from Thunderworks Games, Cartographers. Mm-hmm. I think I played alone today just for wind down purposes. I think I played 6.
Nice.
It's that nice comfort game for me to wind down. If you don't know what it is, it's a lovely little flip and draw where you're making maps. You have goals that you have to achieve, and I think the solo is so much better than the multiplayer gameplay. Multiplayer's fine. Solo is where it's at for me. And then the Theater Geeks, Maria, Tara, Jason, myself, we've actually started playing the legacy version of Aeon's End. And Jason picked that up last year at Gen Con and has been itching to play it. And so we actually cracked it open and gone through 3 chapters now.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have 2 legacy games sitting on my shelf and 2 campaign games that haven't gotten played yet. No, 3 legacy, because we have Ticket to Ride when you start.
We just picked that up at Gen Con. We went halvesies. Oh, speaking of what's so funny is, do you realize that at an earlier episode before Gen Con, we was like, hey, you want to go halvesies on that? And then we completely forgot that we said that. And then we went to Gen Con, and then we released the episode where we actually said it.
So what's funny, there were 3 things like that in that episode as I was editing through. One was that. Another was talking about trading away Nidavellir, I think.
Nidavellir, yeah.
No, it was raw.
Yeah.
It was trading raw to you.
Yeah, you're like, I guess I'll take it.
And it was funny. There were a few things in that episode. It's like, oh yeah, we'll talk about it in the future. It's all these things came true.
Yeah, pretty much it was self-prophecy. What about you? What's been on your table?
Not a whole lot. The first thing you were talking about, using it as kind of a wind down, a relaxation thing. It's been a Gentle Rain. I've played more of that. It's so easy to throw it out, just zen out. We've talked about it in the past. I believe we talked about it on our solo episode.
We did.
Phenomenal
It was great.
Little game.
Great.
In addition, in the solo realm, I got to try out Skoentir finally. And Skoentir is from Morten Monrad Peterson. It is published by Impatience, who is the in-house label for Shadi Torbay, who does all the Oniverse stuff. And it is a really interesting solo game. My first play, I wasn't convinced that there was enough there to have me keep it. And even at this point, I think I've got it rated like a 6.
Okay.
But it's one that if I want the, I don't want to say push your luck, but it has enough depth where I can feel like I'm getting a bigger solo game, but still have it be done in 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, nice.
So it's pretty, it's a small box. In our table shelf trade, it would be a table for most people. I got it in a trade, and I got it for next to nothing in a trade. So it's going to stick around for me because it sits in a very small box in a shelf on top of my other Oniverse games. That,
yeah.
As far as bigger games, I played a game of Colonialism Light.
Okay.
Fireball Island, Crucible card.
Yeah.
And Fireball Island is great, but it's one of those themes that when you think about it now, it's a lot worse than when it was in the 90s, because you are tourists that have hired a company to take you to an island, and you're going to take photos and loot the island. You're taking souvenirs back home. It's a little bit of like colonialism is the problem. So
actually, it's even more commercialism and profiteering off of
yeah.
I wouldn't say colonialism. It's more like capitalism.
It's specifically coming in, taking the resources from a local populous island, and then leaving.
I mean, hopefully leaving.
Yeah, it's look, it's thematically dicey anymore, but the game is. The bees are always in the game at this point.
Bees are great.
Super fun. The other one, and we've talked about it multiple times, I've been playing an Age Contrived.
Yeah.
And it is phenomenal multiplayer. Really enjoyed it in that I prefer multiplayer to solo. The solo bot is a little fiddly.
Okay.
And as much as you can do on your turn in an Age Contrived, I'm spending more time maintaining the bot than I am taking my turns.
Oh.
And so that's a little frustrating.
We discussed that. You don't want to do more work
right
with the solo than you actually have to do with your being.
It's an interesting way they developed it, and it was a different developer than the main game. So Chris Matthews did the main game, and is another person who did the solo mode. And I think they did a good job of approximating what a human player would do in a game of that complexity. And the thing I will say is it still feels like the multiplayer game, which for as big and heavy and crunchy of a Euro as an Age Contrived is, that's a pretty big compliment. So is it useful to learn the game, get used to the systems, figure out the characters? Yes. Is it something that I would say is a prime, like, this is what I want to play solo? No. But if you and Jason or whoever sat down and be like, hey, we're going to play an Age Contrived, like, bang, throw it on the table, I'm happy to play it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, that's really been the big stuff.
Fantastic.
So this week's topic of the week is a bit of an esoteric one, where we've touched on this through previous conversations, but we really want to sit down and talk about what are your obligations as the host of a game night. Not in the sense of clean your bathroom, bring some pizza, make sure people have pop and whiskey. Whatever, that's general social stuff. Get yourself together. I'm not your mom. What I wanted to talk about is more the experience at the table with the people, all that. There's a few different questions that I wanted to start with, and so let's start here. Should you have the game set up? Should you know the rules? All the basic stuff. I know when I walk into a game night, I am expecting those things, but I have just as many times walked in and it's been, hey, we're going to play this game, never played it before, and I'm going to try to teach you out of the rule book. Not a great way to learn a game. Really slows down a game night, in my opinion. I think if you are hosting people and you have put something out, and especially if you are going to do that before you know your exact makeup of who's coming, you should know your game.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there when it comes to at least know what game you're going to have. I'm the type of person, I typically don't have my game set out because it's one of those things of letting my friends experience the pieces as they come out so they can actually sit there and look, and as I pull stuff out, that's where I start to do the teach.
Sure.
You know, it's like, this is what these cards are. That's what these pawns do. This is the currency, etc. and so forth. Having it all out is great, but I also think sometimes it spoils the surprise of the game if you have the game already laid out.
So I think the reason I sit in that space is just to try to speed up being able to get right into a game. Because for me, like if we're playing Q-Birds, yeah, I put out 16 cards. It's not that tough.
Right.
But if I am setting up something like Noon Attack, where I have to put out the frame, I have to make sure all the card stacks and the tile stacks and everything are appropriately sorted and organized and all that, I would rather just have it ready to go. So that way the first game of the evening can be, hey, here's the rules, here's the pieces, futz around in front of you. Basically, the more complex the player board becomes, the more I want it already on the table.
See, obviously I don't do that with you because we play games and you usually have everything already set out. With my other groups of friends, that whole I'm setting stuff up is the great time to get the chit chat done and over with. Because my friends, like our other group of friends that we play with, we're all very, very social once we get into that space together because we don't get a chance to see each other. So that time when I'm sitting there and I'm building the pyramid of whatever or pulling out all the cards, that's a great time to get that quick social.
Sure.
Oh, hey, Becky, I heard you set your boss on fire. That type of stuff. And like what led to that and get those things up off and out of the ground.
You've seen it though. And I think the reason I start there is because once we've entered into this space for gaming, we've already done. Because people come in upstairs, we sit in the kitchen, we talk for 10, 20, 30 minutes, whatever. And then once we head down into the gaming area, that's when we've shifted socially into that mind space. But I think it totally makes sense if that is not what you're doing, if you only have the one space or if that's where you congregate. However, if you are the more social people, that it does make sense to have that as you're setting up. I need to walk back a little bit of what I said earlier in that when especially I have a very complicated player board in front of me, it is one of those, I will have mine set up so that way other people can set theirs up, look at mine, and I can explain why pieces go certain spots. But yeah, on the whole, I get why you would use that as here's the social time, like here's your bag of stuff. Let's talk while we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, also, you have to know your game. If it was a challenging game, if it was something that was complex, I definitely wouldn't be trying to set stuff up. I'd be like, okay, let's can it real quick so I can sit there and explain all these pieces to you. But I love my friends, and they're currently not listening to this podcast, and we don't play those types of games, so I don't have to worry about that when it's a difficult teach.
Sure.
So it's one of those, it's a know your game, know your audience type of thing. And we discussed knowing your audience in an earlier episode.
Well, that's actually something I wanted to bring up is your audience. So we've covered this a little bit in, make sure that you have the right level of game. But I made the jokes earlier about Fireball Island.
Yeah.
What is your thematic responsibility? In fact, our previous episode was top thematic games, so we got into it. One of the ones I talked about was the Underground Railroad and freeing slaves in Civil War era America. That's heavy stuff. Do you think that as the host you have an obligation to tailor what games are potentially on the docket, or is it hey, you're here, it's my turn to pick a game, whatever it is, we're going to play this and hopefully you can come along? What responsibility do you feel thematically?
When my friends and we get together, we don't typically have a theme. It's typically like, hey, I got this game, I really want to play it, let's play it. Now, I have done it where it's a game that was, like if I was doing Q-Birds, I'd go to McDonald's and order like 60 chicken nuggets, just because that'd be funny.
Play Wingspan after I have a bird night.
Yeah, exactly. Just have a whole bunch of bird games. We've done that before.
Well, and that's what I'm getting at is more the theme of a game versus a theme of a night.
Typically when I'm with my friends, especially if it's my group from Fort Wayne, I will sit there and be like, hey, this is what I'm bringing. What are you planning on bringing? Just so that like we all know what's going to hit the table or potentially hit the table. Do we do themes? Not always, because typically it is want versus need. It's like, hey, we haven't played this game in a while. Let's play it. Or I just bought this game and I want to make sure that it hits the table because it's a $75 game. So it tends to be around those two axes.
I know that there are certain themes that I'm not going to put in front of certain people. Natalie does not like strict war themes.
Oh, yeah.
While she's willing to play most things, she's not going to engage with that. So I have a broader collection to kind of meet people where they're at. But I will say I have been trimming my collection down significantly. And I've just come to those points where I realize like if that theme isn't in my collection anymore, doesn't really matter.
Right.
So since we're still in the thematic bent atmosphere.
Yeah.
Not the terrible game.
No.
The idea of, do you put on background music? Do you do soft lighting? Do you do all the stuff? Or is it just, hey, this is a space, come in, and we're just going to engage and fade away into the game?
I know you enjoy doing the themes. You put on music. You haven't really changed the lights that much ever.
Yeah, I don't have like the hue bulbs or anything.
I know, right? Oh, God, that'd be so cool. It just really depends on time. If I want to put that much effort, if it's going to be appreciated.
Sure.
And typically, unfortunately, I'm typically going to a person's house. I wouldn't be like, hey, Steve, we're going to play a space game. Can you put space music? And he'll be like, what the heck is wrong with you? To some people, it elevates, and other people, it's just like, it's a distraction. Mm-hmm. So while it's awesome, it also has an equal detriment to some people. So
when I was playing Fireball Island,
yeah,
group of people I don't normally play with, it was a special event night I was at. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to bring this. Makes sense. It looks pretty. It's easy to teach all the things.
Yeah.
And one of the players was like, you know, it'd be really great, like Indiana Jones music. Bam, I got you. So
I got you, fan. It's another know your audience.
Okay, that's fair. You're right. I love putting on background music. That's because of who I am as a person. I actually use it as filter for other things. And
it's your vehicle. It's your vehicle to get us into the mindset of the game. You even said with a gentle rain, you put on rain music. It's not a rainfall. And I get it. I totally get it. Music when we're doing a theming of a game, I think it works best. Like if you know everybody needs to come in and like really relax. Like if you know if all your friends have had a really rough time, do the theme music. Make it a little more. Do a little bit of a production on it because, you know, putting on music is going to take you, 30 seconds to find the right stuff. You're going to be like, oh, I know it would be perfect for this. Make it a production for your friends when you know they need a little bit extra.
Well, and that's something that I definitely try and do with curating whatever the potential pool of games is for that evening. If I know people have come in and they've stressed out, I think we've talked about this in the past. Kanban EV is not a stressed out game night.
No.
That is for, hey, heads down, super crunchy, let's go. In that position, especially if I'm able to read my friends or the group of people I'm with, maybe kites is the right choice because it's fast and it gives us that little bit of tension, but maybe that time pressure is really wrong for them.
Right.
So I do think reading the emotional state of people and picking games for that. I am also in the position where people come to play my games more often than not. You may bring something every once in a while. Jake may bring something every once in a while, but on the whole, that is a stacked collection back there that we don't get to play most of anywhere near enough.
Right.
So I think I do also come at it from that aspect of when I'm realizing, hey, I'm going to have 2 to 5 people tonight. Here's the range of games that we should go with. Here's where my mental space is at. Here's, you know.
And also you as the host also do a really good job of sitting there. We're like, hey, is game night still happening tonight? Cool. How are y'all feeling? Like, you're not going to have a random stranger at your house for a game night, typically. I mean, every once in a while, you know, hey, can I bring my friend?
Yeah.
It happens.
Like, we have an open table here.
Oh, yeah. In fact, there was a night I was supposed to come here to record, and I went, nope, don't have the spoons. And you're like, do you have enough to be able to come over and play games? And I'm like, yeah, I think I can pull off games. I can't talk. Like logically right now, and came over, and the games we had one difficult game. It ended up being a difficult game. It wasn't actually a difficult game. It just ended up being a difficult game for me that night.
Yeah.
And
we need to replay that because I really want to talk about that game with you in the future.
Going back into my headspace and looking at that game, beautiful game. I think I will do better at that game in my current headspace. But the whole thing is we pivoted. Like you had a nice little list of games. So like, okay, I think this is going to be on where you're good at. And then you literally went, okay, we're going to get through this game. And then we're going to go down a level just because I know I don't need to stress you out. Yep. And that was literally how you do it as a host is know your audience. And I was the audience that day. So, you know, it's fun. It's fun to sit there and make a list that works well for people.
So there's one other category I think is worth bringing up in this conversation.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it just a moment ago by saying, you're not going to have a stranger in your group. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, I don't know. But how important is the makeup of the group of people around the table? Do you care that 2 people may have friction between them because they both like games and maybe they can work it on the table? If you have too many people show up, what do? Do you cut a game short if an extra person is showing up? Do you split into 2 groups or more? How do you handle just people?
Well, first, people, ew. But I think that, like any good Friends episode, you pivot. If all of a sudden we have a bunch of people that I don't know personally and they're joining us for the game night, I know what I can do an easy teach, because if I don't know if they're a game person and they're just being drug along, I'm like, okay, that's when I'm pulling out Ticket to Ride. I'm pulling out Suro, because slapping down tiles is not hard, even though, it does have a little bit of strategy to it. Those are the easy ones that I'm going to grab if an extra person shows up.
Sure.
Then maybe I'm just teaching, in all honesty. If I was planning on playing a 4-player game and the 5th person shows up, I'm the teacher.
I am who I am, and so I enjoy teaching games. Hence why I go to Gen Con and do all the things that I do.
Oh, yeah.
But for me, a game night is still a game night, even if I am just in the teaching position.
Oh, right. If you know your collection, it's easy to shift over to a teaching position
Yeah.
because this space that we have is supposed to be for everybody. And when the new person shows up, you're supposed to be welcoming. And even if that means that, man, I really wanted to play this game with everybody, maybe I can help that person have a really good time.
We had a night where it turned out to be 8 of us. And with our group, we never split. Before we had kids and before everybody was married and all the things and people would come over, we would have 8 to 12 people on the regular. And so at one point, my collection was very weighted towards high player count games because that was the average night. And then everybody got married and kids and life. And now we're all in our late 30s. It's fine, whatever. I know you're not.
Lucky.
And so we ended up one night where I've kept a few games in that category because you never know when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it just so happened one night it was 8 people. And so I looked at the table. I'm like, we have 8 people. Bang, here's Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space. And I had one person just straight up look at me and said, anything else, I will not play that game again. And it turns out that they just get so stressed during Escape from the Aliens, which you've played it, you get it.
Yeah.
It is 30 to 45 minutes of sheer paranoia. And they're like, I can't do it.
Right.
And so we pivoted and we played Captain Sonar instead. Do you have any other notes, thoughts, anything?
I mean, when you're the host of a game, know your audience. It really does boil down to your audience. Like I said, when I'm with my Fort Wayne friends, we haven't seen each other in a while. I'm going to teach the game as we're talking because, my God, I haven't seen you guys in a while. Let's socialize as this game is going out. But, of course, I always do like the fact that we talk up there and we come down here, we still talk, and then but the game's already all set up. So, like, the conversation can start to finish once we get into this space.
Yeah, I think just being amenable and understanding and part of the group and not authoritarian and, hey, this is a game we're playing, deal with it. Because I've had games set up and ready to go and you've looked at me. You're like, I just don't want to. I'm like, that's fine. Put it back away and do something else.
Yep.
So, yeah, knowing your audience and more importantly, I think being part of it.
Yeah, you have to be honest about everything when you're dealing with it because it sucks to put away a game, but the whole thing is the idea is we're all having here to have fun.
Yeah.
So.
And it just gives us more time to talk.
Exactly.
All right, Scott, your favorite of our segments. This is why did I play that? I hit you with a big one this time.
You did. And the fact of the matter is, you finally got me.
Yeah, I did.
Because technically, this can also slide into the why did I wait so long?
And that could honestly go into both positions for me as well.
Yeah.
So we're talking this week about the absolutely stunning production of Wonderland's War. Wonderland's War, produced by Druid City Games, developed by Ben and Tim Eisner, and the art by Manny Tremblay is awesome. We've talked about this in the past. You give me Alice in Wonderland as a theme, I am in. And this is an area control game through and through. So that already put Scott way on the back foot.
Oh my God. I'm like, good Lord, no. You told me, like, hey, we're going to play this area control game. And I went, no.
And when you're looking at the game, there's a lot to set up.
There's so much to set up.
It's not that bad of a teach, in all honesty.
No.
But it is a huge, big game that also has a high amount of push your luck, which
puts
ultimately
you.
put me on the very back
And I'm
foot.
like, yay, push. Because, I mean, we played it, and boy, I went like Flynn with my battles.
Oh, yeah.
I should not have won some of those battles, but my luck is stupid, so.
So what's funny about this is I made a trade for this. And I traded away 2 Lacerda games.
Okay.
Because we can talk about him later, but essentially he broadly designs in 2 categories, and the 2 games were in the category that I don't particularly enjoy.
There you go.
I got this, and I got Endless Winter in that trade. And I think it's so funny how
both I
completely
should
polar
not
opposite
like.
you are.
And I'm like, one I could set on
Yep.
fire, and the other one I'd be like defending with my life.
In Wonderland's War, it is a 2-phase, 3-round game. And in the first phase, you are going to be at the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, and you're going to be moving around the Tea Party track and essentially open table drafting some kind of special ability card that is going to give you followers to place on the map. It's going to potentially give you shards of madness. There's all kinds of stuff on these. Then once you have received 4 cards, you will place your character out onto Wonderland itself, and then you will go through the area control portion of it, where there are 5 battlefields, and the battles are simply drawing chips from your bag. And whoever ends up with the highest total, or if they're able to max out a track before somebody else without busting, you get control of the space. And it has a little bit of that Amun-Re feeling, where if you get wiped out, but you still have a castle there, you still have some presence in future fights. So it's not just great, I'm done, battle's over. It's a continual fight for that space. The production is stunning. The artwork is phenomenal. I have a half deluxe version. I don't have the minis, but I do have the deluxe chips and the expansion in here. It's so good.
So good. So good. I mean, coming from the space of, yeah, it is a area control game. The beautiful balancing factor is that push your luck portion. I know I wouldn't enjoy it if it didn't have that push your luck portion. The beautiful part of that beginning strategy of going around the table, and all the Wonderland characters are going clockwise, but Alice goes counterclockwise.
I love it. She's my favorite.
And what's so beautiful about that and what makes it so distinct is the fact that since she goes counterclockwise, she's eliminating things for the other players before they get to that section of the board. The other problem is Alice has to deal with what's left
on the other end.
On the other end. And there's more characters on the other end than just her.
And the other end, they can start laying traps for her or taking what should be easily accessible. These systems are so finely balanced that I think the Tea Party phase is by far my favorite part of the game.
Oh my God, it's such a cool portion of the game.
And it's you sit there and think, okay, I'm just gonna pick 4 cards, great, whatever. Like the battles, the area control is a lot of fun. I like the presence of putting out your tokens, of actually figuring out, okay, where am I going to put guys? And, oh, I have this special power that, hey, Alice can now pop over here. There's some really neat stuff in that phase. But everything that Tea Party phase does, because the Jabberwocky can sit there and say like, yep, these cards are poison now. Don't touch them. You don't want to touch them.
I mean,
it's
Mad Hatter at the end of the round, I had the power where I'm not going to join the board. I'm going to get another card.
Or you could just sit there and be like, you know what? My party, I'm going to reset the board. Like, everybody has a very unique power for that phase that then allows them to become deeply asymmetrical in the second part of the game.
Oh, yeah.
Even with the way the area control works and all the push your luck, which, you know me, bag pulling is not something that I enjoy in games.
Nope.
Quacks of Quedlinburg is my endless winter. I would vastly prefer to burn every copy of that in the world than ever have to play it again. And with this, even though it is still chip drawing, even though it still has all the things, because of the way that some of your quests can lay out, or there are special powers, or you have the shield token that you can prevent a madness from being pulled, it still has to go back in, but you're a little protected there. There's enough mitigation that even if I am pushing, it's because I want to push, not because I need to. Because maybe I just need to be in a fight and get my strength track to 6, and hey, look at that. I know I'm going to complete a quest. And oh, you just hit me with something that dropped my strength by 2. Crap, and I'm already past.
Yep.
So
that's what happened to me in one of the battles.
Such an interesting balance.
Well, and the sheer fact of whatever's in your chip bag is in your chip bag for all the battles. So if you are in 3 spaces, what's in your bag has to last for 3 battles. So you're literally going to go, okay, great. I have to make sure that what resources I have, I spend wisely. Because, that's what, and I think that's also where it sinks. Because it's like, great, I got all these chips. But technically, you've probably gotten the same amount of chips as I have. But you're on that side and you're dealing with the Jabberwocky, and I'm over here and I'm dealing with the White Rabbit. And then all of a sudden, oh great, a third person has decided to show up. Awesome. Now there's 3 of us trying to deal with this.
That is such a brilliant moment when you're playing the game of you and I are sitting there and we are preparing it and we have our followers there and we are like, okay, this is the big battle. We need to go into this. Why is Roger in this fight all of a sudden? Oh no.
And he's only got 3 guys, but it's enough that screws everything up.
But it's enough that what is happening, I now need to completely rearrange my strategy for all the other fights.
Yep.
And the fact that you can just go to any location when you're placing your guys, it's not, okay, so I have to go here and then I have to truck them through Kamchatka to get into Alaska. Like,
nope.
You don't have to worry about that.
Everything is everything is touchable by the Mad Tea Party.
Yeah.
Poof, you're over here. Poof, you're over here. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Oh, it's such a good game.
And then you have the engine building aspect where as you are able to forge chips, you're able to make your chips better. depending on how much of what you've put on your forge track, you're now unlocking asymmetric powers. So Alice in the T phase goes counterclockwise, but in the area control phase, when she is actually doing stuff, if she pulls her chips, she might be able to spring up in a fight that she shouldn't be at. She might be able to double the strength of something. Like, just really neat stuff like that. And then this has the biggest, most wonderful aspect to it that you have heard me talk about endlessly in all these games: high modularity.
Yeah.
Because there are all these different sets of chips that represent Wonderlandians. Depending on which card you choose to play, each one can be 4 different things. And there's just so much modularity there. When you throw in the expansion, it actually replaces the deck of Wonderlandians. So there's a completely different set of stuff there. The game is flexible. It is really interesting. It's thinky. The only, and I think this is a fairly serious negative, it's long.
It's very long.
There's just so much going on. The choices that you were making, especially in the Tea Party phase, because you would think like, oh, okay, I'm going to go here, I'm going to do this, take my card, do the thing, bang, 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 bang.
Yep.
Doesn't happen.
No.
Especially as the card pool changes and you're seeing as people are placing things out from the cards they've taken. So the response to other people, it's a long game. You're looking about an hour per round.
Yeah. And because the whole thing is it doesn't cause analysis paralysis, but it's one of those things of like, this is a long-term strategy because you're really looking at, if I do this, can I get this quest right? What is this going to do to affect next round? And you're literally looking at the next space. And because after the battle is done, you go back to your Tea Party phase as if nothing had happened.
Yep.
Even though there's castles on the board and you might not have any guys left.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
I wish it were shorter so I could table it more often.
Yes.
But man, it is, I already know it's going to end fairly high in my top 100 games at the end of the year.
If it doesn't, I'm just going to slap you.
That's
because the fact of it is at its heart is an area control game. And I'm sitting here going, and I want everyone to pay attention, like mark it on your calendar. I will play this again.
Yeah.
And there's currently
you have
2.
asked me to play it again.
Yeah. The only other game that's basically an area control game that I'm like, I will play it again is Twilight Imperium. Yeah. And that's the end of the list.
You haven't tried Eclipse yet. I'm interested to see your response to Eclipse.
That'll come on a date when we have more time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Wonderland's War. God, I can't believe you made me play it, and I can't believe we waited this long to do it.
I went into this one super nervous because I looked at him like, I like the designers, I like the artist, I like the publishing house, I love the theme, I love the ideas presented there.
Because this artist is the one that did my Dice Throne.
Yes, it is. It's Manny Tremblay.
Ugh.
And so I'm sitting here just looking at this and saying like, all this is there, but it is run around an engine of push your luck, bag pulling. We're going to see if this pulls out. And man, it did.
Yeah.
It really did. We sat there at the beginning of the first round like, why do we need to worry about these shards? And even though they really only come into effect in that Tea Party phase, and really then only at the end of it, they're so important.
They're so important.
All the rules that are in this box make sense. They are there for a reason, and they thankfully give you a really phenomenal flowchart. There's a really great play rate of, okay, this is how battle works. So for this first round, we're going to be a little mechanical and just go down the flowchart, but then it all just clicks and okay, this is what we're doing. So good. I wish it was shorter. Legitimately, my only knock against the game is it is too long. And that's why if I had to give it a score, I'm giving it a 9 because that length keeps it from getting tabled. But man, if you said, hey, we have 3 hours, let's play now.
Yeah, this is an easy 8 for me. And the only reason why it's an 8 is because it is area control at heart. And we already know that I say an area control for me is going to start at a 3.
Yeah.
So the fact that it climbed up 5 points.
Pretty massive. And
I completely agree. If it was a little faster, if it didn't take up as much time, it would totally be a 9 for me as an area control.
I know.
So, on the date of this recording and the date that you guys are listening to this, another area control game is on my list. Hey, Bat Family, Scott here. Join me and my friends for a weekly live play tabletop storytelling game on Theater Geeks Twitch channel. Check out www.twitch.tv/theatergeeks on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. It's time for some table shelf and trade.
Cool.
Why don't you, like, usually you throw it to me, I'm throwing it to you. What is on your table shelf and trade?
So the first one we mentioned earlier when we were discussing what's been on the table.
Yeah.
And that is Chu Han. So Chu Han is the new Tom Lehman game, which is already a name that, well, realistically, I am realizing that I actually don't like a lot of Tom Lehman games.
Oh, no.
I love Jump Drive.
Oh.
I think Race for the Galaxy, for the people that like Race, I totally get it. It is your 2-player game of just sheer craziness. Go have fun.
It's not for you.
I think it's overly complicated for its own good.
Okay.
Roll for the Galaxy, to me, better than Race, still overwrought. Don't really care.
Okay.
Res Arcana, I enjoyed, but I ultimately wore out. We've talked about that in the past. So I get into the space where we're at Gen Con, and it was either Wednesday night or Thursday night. I don't remember which one, but I'm sitting there in bed, getting ready to prepare for the next day, and I decide, I'm going to look down the BGG list one more time, and here's Chu Han on the list. It got added the day before, and they brought all the 150 of them with them.
Wow.
So I see the theme, I see the name, and I'm like, okay, I'm in without realizing where I'm at on Tom Lehman, which I guess spoiler alert if you are in the future and you are hearing this ahead of me. So it was presented as a trick-taking game set in the Chu Han contention, which is in around the 206 to 208 BCE, I believe. Inside the box is a full historical guide to the contention, all of its major players, all that. It is phenomenally illustrated. It is absolutely gorgeous. Ryan Ferreira and Maxime Erceau, they remind me a lot of Mario Wibisono's art, who I always loved finding his cards inside of L5R. That's Japanese, this is Chinese, I understand, but very similar in their presentation of the characters, so I was drawn in. As it turns out, this is a card shedding game, and I'm sorry, card shedding is not trick taking. They are different categories to me, and it's overwrought for how small of a game it is. There's not a lot going on as far as components. In fact, they give you a little travel box and they give you travel components. So if you want to use the scorecards instead of the actual big dragon score track, you have an option of, I'm going to take this very small box because it is smaller than Parks's and turn it into basically a pocket game. The problem is the space that it's operating in is very busy, and there's that one mountain out there called Scout that everybody's going to compare this to. Mm-hmm. Scout is better. I still don't like Scout that much. For me, I could sit there and I could play this as a specifically 2-player game, or I can go and I can play custom heroes for 2 to 6 players.
Yeah.
And I have more fun with custom heroes. The art on this, like I said, is beautiful.
Gorgeous.
But it actually fights with the fairly bad graphic design on the cards, because I think it is hard to read where these special abilities are if you're not paying attention and you aren't looking at the bottom of your cards where it's in small font.
And the font is white and it's thin.
And so there's graphical design issues there. The player aids to tell you what the powers do aren't the most clear. It's just, this one is a total trade for me. It will be leaving my collection. It came in that transitory state. I had very high hopes. And then I sat down, I read all the rules for it, and I realized this isn't going to last.
I mean, like, all the 2s, like, it was like, the 2s have a thing where if you have 6 2s, that gives you so many extra points. All your 3s have so many powers, and there's 7 different 3s, so every 3 has a different power. The 6s have a thing, and there's 4 6s, and then the 0 has a thing.
This is not a complicated game.
It's not.
And there's a scenario guide in the back that says, hey, play some version of the historical conflicts. One person is going to take the Chu cards, the other person is going to take the Han cards. Doesn't happen.
No.
It just, you're still just playing card shedder. That's it. I want a bigger game in this theme. I would love to explore the Chu Han contention more. I would love to explore this history more. There is some clear and true dedication to what they were trying to present here that I think was let down with a very weak game.
Yeah.
So this one's a trait for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm kind of going to like a little bit of different route. I decided to go back into like my history of stuff that I absolutely love, stuff that I've talked about, stuff that I've completely forgotten to talk about that I actually do enjoy. The first game I'm actually going to talk about, I love art. I think art is gorgeous. I love going to art museums. And so when Atelier, the painter studio from 2019 came out.
From AEG.
Yeah, from AEG. It hit a nice sweet spot for me. I'm just going to start off with saying, like, right now it's kind of a it's between that fine line of table and trade.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of games out there that I feel are better, but you have assistants that are going out and getting you paint. You're a little bit of a majority type of thing because you're trying to get so many little guys out. You're spending your chips, and it's a good game. But there are other games out there that work so much better. The designer technically for this game is uncredited. I thought that was very, very interesting. There's like almost 30 artists that were a part of this game.
Sure.
So it's a long, I mean, well, because they also are putting actual realist paintings in there. But I mean, it's a little bit of area majority and influence. There is contracts and there's dice rolling because you're using the dice to be able to do certain actions, which is part that I like because it is that luck aspect. So I think that's something, I guess, technically is another area majority that I like, but it's not really an area majority game. I think that's I think it's more influence than it is majority. Because, like, if I have more influence in the reds, I get to grab reds. You don't get to have reds until you have a majority in it.
Sure.
Everything that I have a majority that I can grab paint for, I get. It's fun. It is a fun game, but it's sat for a while.
I have never gotten to play this. I have always had it on I would like to play it, but it has sat on deep discount on AEG's web store for years. It's like $10 on there.
Wow.
And
I think I even got it when I got on sale.
I remember sitting at that. I'm like, this could be good. It looks pretty, but if AEG is offering this out for $10 for this long, that's why I've never, but I've also never known anybody to play it to have an opinion come back on it.
You know, it's going to have to be one of those, we're going to have to do a night of the games that we need to play again. And I think that should be on the list that comes over here because, like, it is a good game. I think this is I would almost say, like, this is a good game for not your beginner, but, like, one step up.
Okay.
There's enough there that it's
I like games in that way.
Yeah. It's not super heavy. There's enough strategy going on there. And I mean, it also is fun when you sit there and you roll the dice and I'm like, oh, look, you had a majority here. Now I'm putting your little guys over here where you already have a majority. Congratulations. But now I have my majority back in blue. Yeah, Atelier, the painter studio. Good game, but if I had someone that was like, hey, I really want that Atelier, I'd be like, Merry Christmas.
Sure. All right, my last one is one of the second editions I wanted more than anything.
Okay.
Because the first edition of the game, rules-wise, was perfect, but the production was a mess. The original game came out in 2017. It is from Adam McIver and Renegade Games. It was one of the first games that I got into where I realized, ooh, Renegade can do very few wrongs with me. And they released the second edition last year at Gen Con. It came out into wider retail, I think, beginning of this year. It was my, like, I need to get this. The way Aquatica Coral Reefs was for me this year, that's what this was for me last year. That is Ex Libris. And Ex Libris, the revised edition, fixed all the issues I had with the production of the first edition. It is a worker placement, tableau development, set collection game where you are going to have a changing array of worker placement spots that you are going to go to, and that's generally going to be how you get cards in your hand. And then you are going to play the cards down in front of you into a 3-row bookshelf, and you are trying to keep everything as alphabetically put together as possible. There's a wide variety of categories in the cards, and every one of the cards has a number of books on them. Every book has a pun on it in some way. It's great. They put a lot of attention into it, and it's just a ton of fun. The first edition, though, those worker placement areas were white, thin text with no background on pastel colors. You couldn't read them to save your life. Didn't matter how good the game was. You couldn't even reasonably play it solo because you were constantly picking everything up and just disturbing everything. It was so frustrating. It was one of those games that I sat there and looked, I'm like, if this ever gets a second edition, I am buying it because it deserves a second edition. And this one has it. The production still has one issue.
Okay.
They have shrunk the main art and they have put the worker placement spaces off to the side. Great. And they put all the rules for that space on a blue background on the side in white text, but it's very readable. The problem is if a worker placement spot has cards that need to go on it, their location is to put them over top of the rules. It's a silly little thing. It's also a very easy fix. You just put the cards next to the worker placement spot or you put it on the art. It's fine. But it's one of those, you were so close. close. But beyond that, the art is still phenomenal. The puns are still great. The scoring mechanism is wonderful. Building your shelves up and trying to figure out what category am I able to go draft for, so that way I can load my library up with forbidden tomes that nobody else can touch. Really neat stuff. It's not that long a game, 30, 60 minutes. The solo mode is a lot of fun. Not a ton of replay for me in there because you have to use a certain subset of the worker placement tiles. Mm-hmm. The revised edition did slice down the player count from 5 to 4, and then they packed out that 5th player into an expansion. But one of the nice things about that is it went from being a fairly expensive game, it was like $60-$70 in the first place, to where the base game is now $40 and the expansion is like $20. So it nets out to be around the same price, but it's not as expensive to get into on the front end.
Yeah, I've played that game. I own that game. I own the first edition of that game. I completely agree when you're talking about that. I actually haven't seen what the second edition looks like. When I heard that there was a second edition, it was one of the games that was on my list I didn't get because it went so fast.
Yep.
And
because we all, as the board gaming hobby writ large, said, this is a great game, fix it.
Yeah, I'm really glad that they did.
It is shelf for me, hands down. As a tangential little bonus mini one, Renegade has another magical library game called Athenaeum. It's a trade. Don't play it.
Really?
It's not worth it.
Oh.
Find Ex Libris, especially now that the new edition's out. Significantly better game.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah.
But phenomenal. Great recommendation. My next one, I'm specifically bringing this up because I've talked about this game, and I'm very excited because I'm getting something for this game soon, hopefully soon on Kickstarter, and that would be the 2021 game Canvas. I actually have the deluxe edition. This comes from Road to Infamy Games. I love it. I don't remember how many games came out before this one. I definitely remember, I know there's one like a Magic-ish game. I know Custom Heroes does it where it has the clear cards that you layer upon each other. This one you are making artwork and coming up with very, very funny phrases. And there are 4 different goals that you have to achieve to earn ribbons. And depending on how many ribbons you have, it determines at the end of the game how many points you're going to score. I love it because they're really surreal. There's some like really crazy shapes that they've come up with. With the second and third set, they've started doing double-sided cards, so there's artwork on both sides, which ingenious. And what it gives you as its bonuses on the bottom of the card change as you flip sides. This is a shelf. I have the big box coming so I can put everything into it, and the mat and all the stuff that goes with it. I love it. It actually is probably, even though I'm going to be putting it in a big box, this is a game that I love so much I would be willing to travel with it, even putting it in a big box.
This is a hard trade for me.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not your style.
It's not even that it's not my style. It's that when I'm playing the game, I either want to focus on scoring as many points as I can, or I want to focus on, let me build a really cool picture.
Right.
We've talked about in the past when it comes to space-based and stuff like that, where if I am just lost in the mechanisms and I'm just having fun and I don't care, that's what I want to do with that game of just let me build something really pretty. I don't care if I win or lose, but I end up being forced into suboptimal scoring and suboptimal design because you can only have access to the cards that are in the river and would end up in your hand.
Right.
And it just, man, I want it. This is one of the biggest, I'm glad I dodged a bullet on that Kickstarter campaigns.
I love it. We'll probably have it for quite some time.
Cool. I'm glad you enjoy it.
Yep. And you will enjoy it through me.
It is gorgeous art.
Oh, it really is.
If I were able to sit there and screw around with the cards and not even worry about the gameplay, I'd have a lot more fun with it that way. Just being able to see like, hey, what photos can I build?
What crazy things can you make?
Yeah.
Gosh, it's
because that's one of the fun
parts.
For some reason, Custom Heroes keeps getting brought up in this episode, but that's one of the fun parts about modifying the cards in there is you've built this -3 somehow. But look, it's a weird robot with a fish and a cowboy hat, and like it's just cool to see what you can build with those cards.
Right.
And that's my favorite part of Canvas. Like, it is a gorgeous game, and it's a brilliant idea. The game just isn't for me.
Right. And fair.
It is time for the rotating segment. This week we have landed back on the archives. I actually really like this one. I know a lot of content creators talk about how old games don't pull in a lot of views or a lot of listens. Frankly, I just like talking about the games I enjoy, and I do enjoy quite a few games from more than 5 years ago. The one that I'm going to talk about, because I didn't talk about it in any of the other October episodes, and it is a game that only comes out in the October Halloween season for me.
Okay.
It is one of my all-time favorite games. It is also one of the few games that I think you actually need to own the deluxe edition for, because the deluxe edition upgrade is a functional one. It is intended to be cosmetic, but it is accidentally a functional one, and it makes the game work much, much better. It is also one of my favorite themes because I love Edgar Allan Poe. He's one of my absolute favorite writers.
Okay.
And the Masque of the Red Death is my favorite of his stories.
Oh, I've seen this one. Did we play this one?
I am not sure if you've played this. This is another one of those games that I shouldn't like, because the game is broken into two halves. The first half of the game, you are trying to figure out hidden information, where you are in the actual mask, and you are going to be moving around Prospero's halls, and each of the rooms on the board represent one of the rooms within the story, and you are trying to figure out where the Red Death is going to show up once the clock strikes midnight. There's a small pause where you take all the information you figured out, and you try to place yourself where the Red Death is not going to be, because if he ever shows up in your room, you automatically die, and he is going to show up in 2 rooms at each of the time periods. So you have to make it through 12 arrivals of him before the game ends. And the player with the highest remaining reputation that is still alive wins the game. It is possible, I've never seen it, but it is possible that everybody will die. It is possible, and I've never seen it, that everybody will live. So the first half of the game is this really interesting balance of how much do I need to worry about my points, and how much do I just need to worry about the information? Do I think I can survive if I don't know everything? Maybe I just want to make sure that I tank Scott, so that way if we both live, I know he won't beat me. But who knows? I hate programming games. I hate programmable movement with a vicious and fiery passion. I've talked about the fact I am not a fan of push your luck. I will still play push your luck games. I will not play programmable movement games. This is the one that I will do that with, because even a really good one like Mechs vs. Minions, it's big, it's complicated to teach, and it takes too long. I'm out. Robo Rally, I would rather make you play Endless Winter again than me play Robo Rally.
I happen to like Rover Rally.
I hate Robo Rally so much.
I know you do.
So there's some real positives and there's some real negatives here. This one came out, it was at Barnes & Noble in its retail edition, and people mostly played the retail copy, and it had some problems because unfortunately they didn't have the deluxe edition, which I went out of my way to chase down, 5 years ago at this point, and I got the minis, which replace the standees. It has these wooden discs to represent your reputation. And in the game, you are going to take your turn based on the position of the reputation. And when you move, you will gain your reputation, and then you will be in your new order. The base game has double-sided tokens that look the exact same. So unless you do something to demarcate who has already taken a turn, you can get lost in the morass of, oh crap, whose turn is it? Have you already gone this turn? Because you're looking at each other's cards, you're interacting with each other a lot, you can get lost in, wait, whose turn is it?
Okay.
These deluxe edition markers are silk screened on one side. So you just move your token, you flip it over, you know you've taken your turn. The board is also, it's very functional, it works very well. The problem with the board is, which one's light blue?
Oh, I mean, if I would have to guess, it's going to be this weird grayish color?
No, that's white.
Oh, so this is the blue.
That's the light blue. Hey, which one's pink?
God, I hope it's this one.
Yep, but look, it has a purple glasses icon on it. The colors are wrong on this board. They match to the story. They are thematically correct, but the tones that they picked for the board are not great. The only reason it's possible for a person with color issues to be able to play this, like one of my friends, is because there are these icons within each room that are very small, and some of them blend in, so it's hard to see where they are.
That little mask or skull or whatever that is very small, and it is literally the exact same color as the floor it's on.
There's some production issues with this game. Yeah. Thankfully, I have the edition that gets around most of them. I understand why this one hit and vanished. But for me, with this edition, and the fact it plays 7 players, and it plays 7 players very, very well, I love the game. It is an absolute shelf for me. I think I can realistically only give it a 7 because of the production issues.
Right.
But it has been as high as somewhere in my top 10 before. I really enjoy this game.
Nice. I went back to one of my favorite. I think they're still in. I'm sure they're still around at least. The publisher, Cheap Ass Games.
They are not.
They're not.
Well, so
kinda.
So Cheap Ass Games has a long history. It's James Ernest who did it. The entire thing with Cheap Ass Games is they would come up with rules, and you would supply all the pieces that you would need for those
loved
rules.
It. I used to go to Griffin Bookstore all the time, and I would pick them up. I had like 6 or 7 of them.
Oh yeah, when I worked at Checkmate in Toledo, I had some from there. I had some from way back in the Bowling Green days at New Frontiers in the game room. Yeah,
like I literally had
Gamers
dice.
Lounge. The Gamers Lounge, man. Ooh, there's a memory.
I literally had pieces of random games that had fallen apart that I literally put in a bag and threw dice in there just to make sure that I had them for the Cheap Ass Games. And I'm bringing up the original from 1996, which is Kill Dr. Lucky, because it's the reverse clue. I know it had a reprint.
It's had a few different reprints. In fact, so the reason we were talking about its complicated history is it eventually got bought out by Steve Jackson Games.
Okay, that's right. Yes.
And then it kind of languished under him, and then I believe somebody else bought it off of them, and then James Ernest bought it back, and so Cheap Ass Games is back.
God, I hope they start producing stuff again. I really do.
There's a new, real pretty version of this game.
Yes, I've seen it. Kill Dr. Lucky, you all hate this man, and you all want to have the distinction of eliminating this man.
One of my favorite rules in the game is you have to give your reason for needing to kill Dr. Lucky at the beginning of every game.
You have a handful of weapons, and you have a handful of protections. Basically, the whole idea is Dr. Lucky follows a very specific pattern of movement, unless a card gets played that changes the movement. Like, he'll jump rooms. But you don't have to follow that pattern. You can go through all the secret entranceways because you want to be in the same room with Dr. Lucky by yourself and no one being able to see you. And then
sightlines are important. It's fun.
Sightlines are so important because the whole thing is like, I'm in the balcony. I can see all these rooms that are in this section because I'm above all of you guys. So those 4 rooms, you can't kill Dr. Lucky because I'm watching you.
Yep.
It's such a cool thematic of the reverse clue.
Absolutely.
And if you can get in there and be like, okay, cool, boom, 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 I'm going to try to kill Dr. Lucky, and then be like, nope, I'm going to do this and this and this and this, and like your shot went wide and he's wearing armor and this. The whole thing is whatever you use to protect Dr. Lucky is removed and the weapons get recycled. So eventually there's not any defenses and someone's going to get there by themselves and they're going to be able to do it. They're going to be able to knock them out.
There's this wonderful moment that happens through the game because one of the things that is super funny about the game is the protections are ridiculous. Like,
silly.
He bent over and he tripped on a feather duster or whatever. Like, but what makes the game is whoever's trying to kill him on that turn, assuming all the other conditions are correct, they are going to play a weapon with some strength number.
Yep.
And everybody else at the table has 1 turn each, 1 opportunity to try and protect him.
Yep.
And if you choose to not protect him, it lands on the next person. And so eventually you'll get around to this point where you're sitting on a whole handful of protection cards. You're like, I'm not going to use these. I'm going to make Scott try to protect him. And then it comes down to, Scott doesn't have a card.
Yeah.
Or I've had that push of, you're going to be responsible for this.
I won a game because of that, because it was super early in the game and everybody's like, I'm just going to wait. And the person who was most immediate to my left had no protection cards and everybody put it on that person. They went, Scott kills Dr. Lucky. And they went, what? And he goes, and he shows his hand. His hand was all weapons. He had nothing to protect Dr. Lucky. And because everybody decided to be like, I'm not going to use mine, I won in like round 2, round 3, which is unheard of.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I used to see this as a benefit to the game. Now I would never do this. 8 players in that game takes a very long time.
Such a long time.
It is probably best at this point with 4, maybe 5.
Yeah, I would say 4.
And it ultimately left my collection because of the player count issues that I was mentioning earlier. It didn't come out with high player counts, and that's all we played.
Right.
But even though I have not played this game in 5 or more years,
oh god, yeah,
I can still tell you every single rule of the game. It is easy to pick up. The jokes that come out of it, like, the guy that's taking a shot at him, a teapot fell on his head. What?
Yeah.
Why?
How?
I'm in the statuary garden. Where is a teapot out here? But there it is.
Yeah, and I think there was even an expansion. Yeah, I'm looking at.
There was an expansion,
and it was a dog that the dog would follow. If you were in the same line as the dog would bark, and
so you would have to kill the dog first. And that expansion did not get used very often because people did not like to kill a dog.
Yeah, I would not want that either.
There was a sequel to this. Do you know about Save Dr. Lucky?
Yeah. Yes, I had it at one point. Like I said, I had like 6 cheap-ass games. And yeah, I had Save Dr. Lucky. I had Killed Dr. Lucky. I don't remember all the other one. I had, there was a TV show one that I had.
There is one other Dr. Lucky, and I forget which one it is. It came out way later, but there's a third one. Save Dr. Lucky, you're trying to save him from sinking on the Titanic.
Ship, yeah.
But the board is falling away as the game goes on, but you need to make sure somebody else is watching you save him, because what's the point of doing it if you're not getting credit?
Yep.
It was not as good of a game, but it's very fun. But just because we're talking cheap-ass games, my favorite of theirs, and my favorite board game title probably, Secret Tijuana Deathmatch.
Yes.
Oh, so good.
Actually, yeah, no, looking at the hardness of this game, is BGG has a 1.65 out of 5.
Oh yeah, no, it's not tough at all.
No, it's not tough at all. And still, talking about this game, we both got grins on our face because it's such a perfect, lighthearted, silly, stupid game. Actually, I might have to buy it. I might have to buy it to put back in my collection.
It definitely worked of when it was introduced to me, but it's one of those games that we know the theme. We know, like, we need to go kill the guy or whatever, but it works so well. And when you introduce it to a new player where they've only played Clue and maybe 13 Dead and Drive, you're like, now try this one. So
yeah, and I think this would be beautiful to play with your wife and our friend Courtney, because we're all theater people, and it would just be how goofy we could make the storyline.
Yeah.
So yeah, find it. It's Kill Dr. Lucky.
Thank you so much for listening to us. If you would like to get in touch with Scott and myself or any of the other theater geeks in relation to Board All the Time, you can hit us up at boardallthetimegaming@gmail.com. You can visit us on our website, boardallthetime.com, where we will have a newsletter sign up as well as a feedback form. You can also join us on our Discord. The server link is in the episode notes. And finally, you can find us on Facebook under Board All the Time.
At this time, we'd like to thank our sponsors. Do you like shiny math rocks? I like shiny math rocks. Go to Robin's Nerd Supplies and use the code TheaterGeeks and receive 10% off your order. Links to the website is in our episode notes. Also, we'd like to thank EcoL Press, a local printing company here in the South Bend area, happens to be a union shop, and they do everything for your gaming printing needs. And what's so nice is that they're environmentally friendly. You will also be able to check them out in our episode notes.
Well, with all that, Scott, I'm bored of this.
I'm bored of you.
Let's go play some games.
Sounds good. Why am I gassy today?
Because you're full of it?